Hi guys, and welcome to the first video in my History from the Battlefield series on this new channel. Surrounding the release of Battlefield 5, the controversy over historical accuracy of the game seemed to upset large portions of the player base, particularly after the release of the first trailer with everyone's favourite bionic cricket bat wielding woman. This gave me the idea to read up on and do some research into the history involved with each of the main operations of the game. I wanted to understand the mindset and decisions made by some of the commanding officers, these men in charge of so many lives, and the impact these decisions had on the armies they commanded plotted the course of the war. The first video in this series will cover the battle for France and will use some of my scout gameplay from Twisted Steel and Arras. Information from this video essay will utilise multiple sources including diary entries, military reports and documentaries. In the lead up to the invasion of France, intelligence had strongly influenced the deployment of the defensive forces of the Allies. The highest concentrations of troops had been deployed in anticipation of the German Wehrmacht breaking through northern Belgium into France. This was due to the terrain strongly favouring the quick manoeuvrability of the Panzer in this area. This was countered by the German forces, however, as main offensives were made that drove through Luxembourg and into southern Belgium and France. The Allied forces in the Ardennes were not prepared in strategy or forces to withstand this offensive and were pushed easily back into France as additional German offensives attacked in the north and south. This was just one in a number of catastrophic errors made by the French military commander Gamelin. As the German forces took Holland in the north and forced their way through the Ardennes and into France, multiple times they were halted due to orders from the High Command. The success that the Germans were achieving caused Hitler to become more and more nervous and concerned by the possibility of a counterattack and didn't want to overplay his hand. The German panzer divisions that pushed through the Ardennes were stretched thin as a young commander, Heinz Gunderan, was eager to press forward and encircle the Allied forces. On May 21st, 1940, multiple counterattacks from Allied, primarily British forces, were mounted against the advancing Wehrmacht. Counterattacks occurred on the River Escaut and at Arras simultaneously. The River Escaut and the battles fought there provide the inspiration for the map Twisted Steel and the battles of Arras for the map of the same name. Prior to these battles, the failing French military commander-in-chief Gamelin had been replaced by Weygand on the 17th of May, a situation that did not help the communication and coordination of a planned counterattack with the British. The German armoured spearhead might have been vulnerable to an immediate counterblow, but the delay gave them time to be reinforced with artillery and infantry that were following. Despite the valiant efforts of the British Expeditionary Forces in the counterattacks on May 21st, Weygand's plan for coordinated counterattacks to link up French forces in the south with Anglo-French Belgian forces in the north came to nothing. The following account is from Jim Stockman of the Seaforth Highlanders as he describes part of the Arras battle. The whole venture was so fierce and bloody. Not only were we giving them everything we had, which was more guts than gear, but they were also section after section who, seeing their positions overrun by the excellent German infantry and tanks, went in with the bayonet, that tremendous last resort weapon of the British infantrymen. It was here that the Seaforths were in their element, and the Germans learned to respect us for our skill with cold steel. The Germans were visibly shaken by the virulence of our attacks, experiencing transient but serious doubts regarding their intelligence assessment of Allied reserves. They must have imagined that we had a lot more tucked away than we did, for however limited the Arras counterpunch, it seemed to have a strong psychological effect on the enemy. The men who went in against massed armour and well-trained infantry used their bayonets as I had never seen bayonets used before. It was like a medieval battlefield of the Flanders, with the thrashing and lunging of bloody blades oddly in contrast with the grinding machinery of the panzers. At one point, 3 German tanks were out of action and their infantry following on behind, confidently and rightly proud of their successes, stopped short and thought twice as soon as they saw our lads coming at them with war cries and bayonets flashing. Clearly, they had never seen this sort of fighting before, and I believe we instilled fresh awareness of the value of infantry, even in highly mechanised warfare. It makes one pause and reflect on a German OKW-51 report of 1942 which stated, "Each new weapon is the death of the infantry, but there is only one new factor in the techniques of war which remains above all other inventions. This new factor is the infantry." In similar vein, Wavell stressed, "Let us always write infantry with a capital I," adding that the infantryman, as was certainly proved in BEF, must be nimble of movement and nimble of mind. The former is largely a matter of equipment, the latter is wholly a matter of training. I would add to this, it is also a matter of determination, which was what Arras was all about. During this audacious counterpunch, I saw one young lieutenant, his arm blown off, still wielding a bayonet with his remaining arm. He was evidently in great agony, but was still calling on his platoon to advance on the enemy. I was proud to say, I am British, watching our efforts at Arras. I have never witnessed bravery like it, and against such staggering odds. A lance corporal with us was limping along, legs shredded, still trying to fire a Bren gun long ran out of ammunition. In the end, in sheer exasperation, he wrenched the bayonets from 2 rifles laying on the ground and ran in with 4 of his men, their bayonets slashing and stabbing in all directions until they were unrecognisable, with blood and dirt. I have no idea if any of these men got through, but if they did and are still alive today, they have my undying admiration. They were among the greatest fighting men God put on this earth. Actions like these could be witnessed time and time again, and if anyone earned Victoria Crosses, these young Scots lads certainly did. Even Panzer II Division in the War Diary commented on the contact with meagrely trained and badly equipped territorials, recording that ground could only be gained slowly and with continual fighting against an enemy who defended himself stubbornly. This seemed to be the norm along the whole residual front. Additional attacks were mounted by Allied forces on the same day on the Escaut River. Allied forces anticipated that these counterattacks would be the final opportunity to prevent Nazi forces from completely taking France. 2 Victoria Crosses, which are the highest and most prestigious award of the British honour system, were earned by British soldiers on the 21st of May 1940. This account from the London Gazette from the 26th of July 1940 shows why. On the 21st of May 1940, Lance Corporal Nichols was commanding a section in the right forward platoon of his company when the company was ordered a counter-attack. At the start of the attack, he was wounded in the arm by shrapnel, but continued to lead his section forward. As the company came over a small ridge, the enemy opened heavy machine gun fire at close range. Lance Corporal Nichols, realising the danger to the company, immediately seized a Bren gun and dashed forward towards the machine guns, in spite of being again severely wounded. Lance Corporal Nichols then went up to a higher piece of ground and engaged the German infantry massed behind, causing many casualties and continuing to fire until he had no ammunition left. He was wounded at least 4 times in all, but absolutely refused to give in. There is no doubt that his gallant action was instrumental in enabling his company to reach its objective and in causing the enemy to fall back across the river Escaut. Lance Corporal Nichols has since been reported to have been killed in action. This declaration of Nichols' death was actually incorrect, however, and he had been in fact taken prisoner and was eventually awarded with the Victoria Cross by the German commandant at his prisoner of war camp in Poland. The second soldier to be awarded the Victoria Cross was Company Sergeant Major Gristock of the Royal Norfolk Regiment. This excerpt documented his bravery that deserved the commendation. For most conspicuous gallantry, on the 21st of May 1940, when his company was holding a position on the line of the River Escaut, south of Tournai. After a prolonged attack, the enemy succeeded in breaking through beyond their company's right flank, which was consequently threatened. Company Sergeant Major Gristock, having organised a party of 8 riflemen from company headquarters, went forward to cover the right flank. Realising that an enemy machine gun had moved forward to a position from which it was inflicting heavy casualties on his company, Company Sergeant Major Gristock went on, with 1 man as a connecting file, to try and put it out of action. Whilst advancing, he came under heavy machine gun fire from the opposite bank and was severely wounded in both legs, his right knee being badly smashed. He nevertheless gained his fire position some 20 yards from the enemy machine gun post. Undetected, and by well-aimed rapid fire, killed the machine gun crew of 4 and put their gun out of action. He then dragged himself back to the right flank position, from which he refused to be evacuated until contact with the battalion on the right had been established, and the line once more made good. By his gallant action, the position of the company was secured and many casualties prevented. Company Sergeant Major Gristock has since died of his wounds. These counterattacks posed by the British Expeditionary Forces caused another halt in the Wehrmacht's relentless push forward. Hitler once again was fearful of overplaying their advantage from repeated victories. Despite the short-lived successes of the Allied forces' counterattacks on May 21st at Arras and on the River Escaut, this halt in the Germans' push into France ultimately provided enough time for the retreat to Dunkirk and the subsequent evacuation of forces to Britain. I hope that you enjoyed this first video in my History of Battlefield 5 series, and if you did, please be sure to like, subscribe and give feedback in the comments section below. The next video will cover the Battle for Rotterdam in Holland, and until then, have a happy new year.